Now you need to yawn. Hey there, kids, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Uncle Frank, hoping that you are having a great day. And in today's video, we're going to be sitting back, relaxing, and having a little conversation about perception and how an initial response to a product can shape its legacy and how well it is received even down the road, so as much as 20 years later or longer. So this is primarily a video about Yu-Gi-Oh, but it does also cover some Magic the Gathering sets as well. There is definitely at least one or two Magic sets worth talking about. But this is primarily a Yu-Gi-Oh video, and it comes up just because earlier today I was thinking pretty heavily about Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal and its general reception, both at release and even now, over 10 years later. So, let's talk about Zexal for a bit. Zexal is the fourth mainline Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. It is what introduced the concept of XYZ monsters, as well as the number archetype, is what it's kind of most famous for, I would guess. Its first set in the TCG was Generation Force from 2011, and its last major one was Primal Origin from 2014, I want to say. I want to say it was 2014. And in comparison to the three anime that preceded it and the sets associated with those anime, the Zexal era cards really do not have that level of desirability, collectability, and demand from the player base. The nostalgia is low. The price tag for a lot of those cards is low, even for the rarest variants, the ultimate rares and the ghost rares from these sets. And it's really easy to look back and say, yeah, part of this low demand and low nostalgia is just from the fact that compared to Yu-Gi-Oh! GX and 5Ds, Zexal really did not get a nice warm reception on release, both as an anime and in terms of what it offered to the TCG. And, you know, just for reference, the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters anime, it gave us the concept of Yu-Gi-Oh! Itself. It brought trading cards to prominence with younger audiences, and basically created an entire culture of playground and kitchen table dueling. That was very fun for a while. And it also gave us some of the most iconic cards in the series history. I'm talking Blue Eyes White Dragon, Dark Magician, Red Eyes Black Dragon, Dark Magician Girl, Exodia and its 5 pieces, Gate Guardian and its 3 pieces. It's a weird set there. And many more examples, not to mention all the video games and such. Duel Monsters really cemented itself as a almost timeless classic, and is to this day the era with some of the most demand behind it, and it's not hard to see why. It was followed up by GX, which had kind of a silly anime, to be completely honest. Kid goes to a school that teaches him how to play card games. Kind of weird, but I get it. I get it. The GX era is most known, I think, for a lot of the archetypes it introduced, not just the elemental heroes and the D heroes from the anime, but the crystal beasts, as well as things like Light Sworns, Six Samurai, the Ancient Gears, Gladiator Beasts. I think the alien archetype started in the GX era. I might be wrong. Oh, the dark counterparts. Dark Armed Dragon comes from a GX era set, for instance. So, like, it's really known for really starting to form some of the concepts that really helped the modern version of the TCG get their footing, not just in terms of deck identity, but real Yu-Gi-Oh! Mechanics being locked in. There's a lot of truck passing by. A lot of the mechanics we know and love today really come from the GX era as a baseline. And then we go to 5Ds, which introduced Synchro Summoning and has some of the coolest monster designs in the history of the game. Stardust Dragon, Black Rose Dragon, you guys all know them, you love them. The Mech Lords come from this part of the game. It's not universally beloved by everyone, but it does have some really iconic cards, and arguably one of the best formats of the game comes from the early 5Ds era, the Edison format, where a lot of people are extremely fond of. And then we move on to Zexal. And Zexal is not received well as an anime. Not a lot of people liked it on release. The main character was annoying. His voice was grating and hard to listen to. And it introduced the XYZ monsters, which were another extra deck special summon monster that just, sure, you played them because, it's the new hotness on the block and you need to have the new cards in the deck in order to maintain meta relevancy. But they never really seem to catch on in terms of popularity. I don't really see people saying, oh, this such and such XYZ monster is my favorite in the game. But I do see them a lot with fusion monsters, ritual monsters even, and a lot of synchro monsters too. There's a lot of people who have Stardust Dragon as one of their favorite cards of all time, for instance. You don't really see that with number 39 Utopia or Leviathan Dragon, number 17 Leviathan Dragon. He was the cover card of Generation Force. He was like the first XYZ cover card, I think. And not a lot of people talk about him. So, fast forward, in relationship from release to today, Yu-Gi-Oh! Came out strong, and today is remembered very fondly and has a lot of demand, even for the higher-end collectors. GX came out kind of weird, but still had a lot of cool cards, and a lot of people still liked the anime, regardless of how strange the idea of a dual school was. And today, a lot of GX-era cards do have a nice premium demand to it. 5Ds was where the series started to go off the rails. It was a motorcycle, dueling on motorcycles. Card games on motorcycles was the meme, I think. But it still had those amazing designs that a lot of people loved, and it still had a really nostalgic metagame that a lot of people are fond of. So, a lot of cards from 5Ds, not all of them, but a lot of them, have that desirability, that nostalgia, etc. But you look at Zexal, which did not have an initially good reception, and didn't have that metagame nostalgia to it, and you start to understand why now, 10 years after the fact, 11 years after it ended, not a people look back on it all that fondly. Sure, I do think that Zexal has not seen its zenith yet. I still think that it has time to grow and appreciate, and some of those cards could become highly collectible at some point in the future, but man, it was not received well. And that's really the crux of this video, the fact that initial reception can make a huge difference in the long term. Sure, some people can come around to a previously hated product. Name a bad Pokemon set from the last 20 years, right? There's dozens of bad ones, but people come around to them all the time. Video games. Starfield, I think, was the one that had a terrible initial release, but then became beloved by its core audience after several fixings. But, that's the exception and not the norm. The norm is that if a product comes out and is panned on release, it tends to, not always, but it tends to have that reputation long into the future. Let's talk about Fallen Empires. Fallen Empires was one of the earliest sets in the game's history for Magic the Gathering. It came out in 1995, right? 1995? No, 1994. Boom. Oh, man. Can't believe I almost got that wrong. Came out in 1994, and it was very poorly received upon release. Not only was there so much of it because demand for Magic was so high at the time, but the cards inside the set just weren't that powerful. They weren't that meta relevant. The power level was down. There seemed to be so much of them, and the general reception of the player base was, holy crap, this set is bad. We hate it forever. And now, despite the fact that it's one of the earliest sets in the game's history, printed in the first 2 years of Magic's history, the cards are uncollectible. They are super dirt cheap even now. And boxes have not broken $1,000. Look at any other set of Magic the Gathering from the 90s and, 93, 94, 95, etc. You'd be hard-pressed to find any other set for under $1,000. For 93, 94, 95. I wonder what Ice Age is at. Is Ice Age under $1,000? It might be. But where am I getting with this? Well, there are some sets now that people think are going to have a miserable time in the future just because of their initial reception at release. Okay, I'm talking about sets like Magic 30 and Spider-Man. Let's talk about those two sets in particular. This is where this video is going, okay? Magic 30 is a set that was despised by everybody when it came out. Sure, it is a mega rare set. The product is super scarce. But nobody was asking for it. The cards inside are unplayable, barely collectible. There does not seem to be any kind of demand whatsoever. And, you know, for a set that came out the window with a $1,000 price tag, let's be honest, not a lot of people had any sort of warm reaction to it. No warm reception whatsoever. And the general consensus at release was, what the fuck is this? Right? You contrast that to a set like Spider-Man. If you look at the internet in a snapshot, you might get the impression that a lot of people have the same impression of Spider-Man, that it's a bad set, it's not worth the money, it's awful, there's no playability to it, etc. And that if you try to project that reception 5 years into the future, it's going to still be a miserable set. But I gotta tell you, people are still buying it. If you look past a lot of the noise, you see that there is positivity in the set. There are still demand. There are still people buying, trading, collecting, and playing with these cards, building decks, filling out collections, and chasing extremely high-end lottery tickets. That Soulstone is... that special one's a pretty penny, to say the least. So I don't think it's really fair to compare Spider-Man to some of the worst sets in the game's history. Sure, its initial reception was terrible, and it is a Universes Beyond set, so obviously I'm not a huge fan. But I think if you can take a step back from the initial reception and kind of filter out the noise of the internet, you'd see that we are probably not looking at a repeat of Magic 30. Instead, we are probably looking at something more akin to March of the Machines Aftermath or Assassin's Creed, where it was initially panned pretty hard, but people eventually came around to it. Or to use a non-Magic example, Willow. You ever hear of Willow? Willow was a movie that did not have a great initial reception, but over time it's gotten this really nice cult following. I don't think it's that great, but there are some people I know who are huge fans of Willow. So I'd like to compare it to that. Because I'm definitely not a big fan of Spider-Man, but I know that there are people out there who are huge fans of both Spider-Man as a brand and Spider-Man the Universes Beyond Magic the Gathering Marvel set. So, just in general, I think it's very important that you always take a step back and remember, yeah, initial receptions, like with Zexal or Fallen Empires or Magic 30, can do a lot of harm to long-term potential for a given product or even a group of products. I mean, it's crazy what you see with these Zexal era boxes. But at the same time, initial reception isn't always a death sentence, as we've seen again with a boatload of Pokemon sets and again things like Assassin's Creed or Aftermath. So what I'm really trying to say here is, whenever you see a lot of people giving their opinions all at once, just remember to take a step back and, yeah, sure, take into account what people are saying. Getting varied opinions is good insofar as I'm concerned. But also, remember to filter out the noise and also look at what's actually going on. Is a set selling despite the panning it's receiving? Are the cards going up in price or down in price? Is there a chase card? Is there any collectability to it whatsoever? And if you ask those questions, and many other questions obviously, and you properly evaluate a product based on its own merits instead of based exclusively on the noise around it, you start to get a better idea of what might or might not be doing good. I mean, when Aftermath came out, a lot of people were panning it as the worst set ever. It's going to collapse the entire TCG. It's going to go to zero. The collector boxes are completely worthless. But if you took a step back from that noise and you looked at the singles in the set, there was some demand there. There was some real demand there. That Ob Nixilis, that Nissa, they were selling and selling pretty well. And it's not really possible, in my opinion, to have any product where the cards inside that product are highly desired and selling, and the box itself is completely worthless. And I think in the long term, we're going to see something like that with Spider-Man. So that's all I got for you kids today. I hope you gleaned something from my mindless garage ramblings. The truck is on, and I am inhaling those fumes. So please like, share, subscribe if you enjoyed the content. Leave a comment down below. Do you think I'm right about Spider-Man, or do you think I'm completely wrong about Spider-Man? Let me know. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. This is the second time trying to record this video because I had a coughing fit the first time, so I'm really glad that I didn't hack up a lung. Thanks again. Have a great day.